You're supposed to remind me. Okay, I'll let record and share. All right. Okay, so welcome to the seventh house, Venus and the love question. And I know that this is a big one. A lot of people are here, I can see, and so we're really interested in kind of knowing about this material, etc. And I completely get it. But what I want to do is, I know I've got some people who haven't been to all of these workshops and who need to kind of be on the same page with those of us who have. And so I just want to do a tiny, it'll be a quick, but tiny bit of review of what we've been talking about, especially from planetary strength and why it matters. So that's one especially to kind of go back over. The ascendant and personal happiness and planetary strength and why it matters are two of the ones from which a lot of this information is coming. A lot of this early information, this preliminary information is coming, and they're on the YouTube channel. Were you able to see that, CF? What did you see what that said?
Yeah. She says that she's agreeing that a review would be great. Maria is saying.
Good, fantastic. All right, so what we're going to review right now, because what we're talking about today is we're talking about not so much, we're talking about how to read a chart and figure out what's going on with the love question. Okay, so when we're looking at it, we're figuring out, I mean, obviously for ourselves, but for any chart that we're looking at, right? So these particular rules that we talked about are very important, and they're, okay, good, we have some new people who have just come in. All right, hi new folks, welcome in. We're just getting started, so feel totally free to do what you need to do, get yourself situated in. I'm just going to go ahead and tuck in. Okay, so the very first thing that I wanted to talk about is actually what I should have put at the very beginning is this quote. The good or bad of an astrological house. Oh, mute yourself, because I don't want to have to click off of the page in order to mute you. So please mute yourself. The good or bad of an astrological house emanates from the state of its planetary ruler. Okay, so the good or bad of the house emanates from the state of its ruler. We're talking about Venus and the seventh house. We can also say the good or bad of a planet's significations emanates from its particular state. Okay, so we can say the ruler of the seventh house is, if it's in fall and retrograde, that's shitty. But we can also say Venus, if she's in fall and retrograde, can't fully be herself. Okay, and so this is why I've started where I've started today, which is we really need to understand, as far as looking at charts is concerned, what are the ways that planets can become weak or strong. Now, why does that matter? Right? Remember, I just did a thing called planetary strength and why it matters. Because the good or bad of an astrological house emanates from the state of its planetary ruler. So if the planet is strong and thriving and doing well, it will be able to produce for the houses it rules. Right? So really with this geocentric, because this is really the astrology we're looking at right now is geocentric astrology. What I tend to call modern astrology is anthropocentric. So it's centered in the person. But actually, astrology beforehand was very geocentric. So it was very much about what's going on in Earth, what's on Earth around you, what's going on with you on Earth and around you on Earth. And as a result, when we looked at planets, it wasn't to tell you what your personality was like. It was to tell you whether the areas of life that they ruled were going to work or not. So that's why we want to know if planets are strong or weak. We don't care personally because, as I say every week, anything can be made to work on a personal level in the natal chart. Anything can be made to work. However, as far as being able to make the areas of life, which equals the astrological houses work, that's something different. So the two ways in which a planet can be rendered strong or weak by essential dignity, which is by sign, which is strength by sign. Essential meaning from esse, which is to be, or accidental dignity, which is by house placement. Accident in this particular case means happening or circumstance.
Yeah. I just put up the Robert Zoller,
Excellent.
that quote.
Yeah. Please either write it down or copy it from the chat or whatever, but that's a major like baseline rule for this type of astrology. The good or bad of an astrological house emanates from the state of its planetary ruler. And so I know you're thinking, well, what does this have to do with love? Well, if everything, right? Because if the planetary ruler of the seventh house, which is your love and marriages, is in a fucked up state, then we have issues and problems. And we're going to talk about issues and problems and karma a little later. But let's now continue to just do a little bit of our review to make sure everybody is with us. So essential dignity is a method of measurement used to gauge the strength or weakness of a planet by sign placement. There are 5 levels of essential dignity. We will look at 2 of them. All right, so the 2 that really matter the most are domicile and exaltation or kingdom. And as you know, pretty much what we've been doing through this series is I've been reading this book called The Introductions to Traditional Astrology, which was translated by Benjamin Dykes. And I'm getting a lot of my material from that book and just kind of reviewing the material, reviewing what I find interesting about it, what I kind of want to focus on, etc. Okay, so domicile, that's when a sign which is of the same substance of the planet and owned, ruled by the planet. So the thing is, signs that are ruled by planets are of the same substance. They're considered of the same substance. Exaltation or kingdom is a sign which is of a different substance. So it's a sign that the planet does not rule than the planet in which the planet thrives and functions especially well. And so down here, we have that's what I wanted to find. Okay, so down here, bring your attention back down to the domiciles of the planets. Those of you who have been with me for a few weeks, you all will probably feel like, oh yeah, I have a pretty good idea of that, but we can always know more, right? We can always get a little better. I'm looking for that planetary rulership. Is it under rulerships? Rulerships, oh darn it. Oh. See, it was all out. Oh, it was astrological dignities, that's what it was. Astrological dignity chart. That's what I'm looking for. No, that's wrong. Shit. Okay, never mind. Sorry, everybody. I'll go back to what I was looking for, the one I had. Okay, so these are there's a really great one that shows exactly like for each sign, what planet, the detriments, the whole thing. And I love it. And of course, it was all out and then I had to restart. Okay, so these are our domiciles of the planets. As you can see, in the middle, we have the planets. And as I say here, or as I've said before, this doesn't have a lot of the material that I talked about the last time. The sun and the moon are considered a singular pair. They're two sides of each other. And so the sun rules the masculine diurnal sign of Leo, and the moon rules the feminine nocturnal sign of Cancer. And basically what we had been talking about was that all of the masculine signs are diurnal or daytime signs, all of the feminine signs are nocturnal or nighttime, and the odd signs are masculine and the even signs are feminine. I'm not gonna type that down, so you need to write it down. The odd signs are masculine and daytime, the even signs are feminine and nighttime. And aside rather from the sun-moon pair, each planet has a masculine daytime and a feminine nighttime expression. And so you can see all of them here, Gemini and Virgo. For this particular one, as you see, I've bolded for Venus, right? So Venus rules Libra and Taurus. So her daytime expression is Libra, her nighttime expression is Taurus. And think about it this way. Her daytime expression is Michelangelo at the Sistine Chapel working. Her nighttime expression is when he goes to his favorite whore's boudoir and relaxes, and she's got all the lovely lush pillows and the lovely fragrances and the great wine and the good food, and he can relax and have a great time there. Or would be a he, probably, wouldn't have really been a she for Michelangelo. Okay, anyway, so Libra and Taurus, those are Venus's domicile. So we're really just talking about Venus today. I mean, obviously we're going to talk about whoever's ruler of the seventh house too. So if you don't already know this stuff, get that down. You can see my little thing here. If a planet occupies either of the signs it owns, it is in its domicile and considered strong and durable in effect. Now, durability is kind of the key to the difference between domicile and exaltation. An example is Mercury in Gemini. Mercury is in his domicile of Gemini. Gemini is the masculine diurnal expression of Mercury. A planet in its own domicile is like a person at home in their own rule or under their own rule. Okay, so that's what we're looking at when a planet. So now remember, we're looking at what strengthens a planet, what makes a planet do well. Because when we start looking at charts, most of the charts I have are of love lives that aren't working. As a matter of fact, I'm looking for a chart, if anybody is here who is happily married with more than one child and under 30, and is interested in sharing your chart with us, give me a buzz, or actually what I'd love is if you share, I can help you to share the screen, and you can share the screen and I can look at it. Most of the charts that I have are going to be of failures in love, of failure in love charts. Okay, so exaltations of the planet. So we just talked about domicile. So a domicile implies at home, right? So as I mentioned before, the other term that was used in this book that I love so much is the word kingdom. Okay, so as exaltation, another term for exaltation is kingdom. And for our specific purposes today, the exaltation of Venus is Pisces. Okay, so here's all the exaltations if you need to write them down. But for today, when we're looking at the love question, we're going to be looking specifically at Venus. Obviously, if the ruler of the seventh is a different planet, we'll be looking at them too. So it's important to know all of these. All right? A planet in its exaltation is like a person who is in their own kingdom and glory. Exaltation is considered less grounded and durable than domicile. There's an aspect of inflation and non-reality to exaltation. All right. All right, so in order to understand the idea that I'm talking about, we're looking at essential dignity. The opposite of that is essential debility, which means the opposite of the signs that a planet is in domicile is detriment. So that's where we come to detriment and fall. So a planet is in its domicile, like Venus in Taurus and Libra, but she's also in her detriment in Scorpio and Aries, because they're the opposite from her signs. So let's look at these six opposites. So just like there were six androgynous pairs, we could group the zodiac into six androgynous pairs. We can also now group the zodiac into six oppositional pairs. And these are the oppositional pairs. Aries and Libra are opposite signs. Aries is ruled by Mars, Libra is ruled by Venus. Taurus and Scorpio are opposites. Taurus is ruled by Venus, Scorpio is ruled by Mars. So the Venus and the Mars signs oppose each other. All right. Gemini, Sagittarius, Cancer, Capricorn, Leo, Aquarius, Virgo, Pisces. Now, the reason I highlighted this is because Pisces is the sign of Venus's exaltation, which means that this is the fall. I'm not sure if I'm going to put that. Fall of Virgo, fall of Venus. Detriment. Oops. And detriment. And we'll do this too. We'll put domicile. Oops.
I sent you a graphic.
I put in the wrong. Did you send a graphic?
Yeah, on the chat.
You did? Okay, nothing showed up. Oh, wait.
It says royal pair is the name of it.
Oh,
It's just that, it's just that circular zodiac that shows the lines between the rulers, you know, so that you have Mars ruler or Venus in one line, you know.
all right, it's opening. Oh, do I have to go drop? Oh, it's already there. Perfect. All right. Here. Okay, that's what she just sent us. So you can see. Oh wait. Oh, so this is different though. These are the royal. Oh, that's different. No, that's a different thing altogether. Sorry. Yeah, that's not gonna be useful. Only because that's actually talking about the connection between. We talked about that before. The aspects that the other planets make to each royal pair, which I think it might be a little easier looking at it this way. I had, like I said, I had all this stuff out, so I'm sorry that I had to do that. Okay, so detriment and fall. All right, detriment and fall. So we're looking at more domicile. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Venus's domiciles are Libra and Taurus, and the opposite signs from those are her detriments. That is the same for every planet. Sagittarius and Pisces are ruled by Jupiter. His opposites are Gemini and Virgo, which means those are his detriments. So that's the logic behind detriment. It's the exact same thing for all of the falls. The opposite sign to the exaltation is called fall. And if we look up here, we have all the exaltations of the planets, right? So Libra, so the opposite of Libra is Aries. Cancer, the opposite is Capricorn. Capricorn, the opposite is Cancer. Aries, the opposite is Libra. Pisces, the opposite is Virgo. Virgo, the opposite is Pisces. Taurus, the opposite is Scorpio. So this is basic astrology. So knowing who's opposite to whom and exactly what's going on with the zodiac, this is actually really beginning astrology. And so the better you know this, the more you'll be able to work with the chart, including your own chart. I mean, I know most of us are interested in this for our own charts. So remember, why is he talking about this? Because when we get to the charts, we're going to see this in action. We're going to see all of this in action. We're going to see it where it looks really good. We're going to see it where it looks really shitty. We're going to see detriment. We're going to see fall. We're going to see et cetera, et cetera. So I just want, and also this is good for anything with reading charts, right? So this, for the minute that you're looking at anything, one of the things that I see all the time on Reddit is someone will ask, oh, can I get pregnant? Or is a lover coming? Or is love around the corner? And invariably somebody will tell them yes. And it will usually be based on something really kind of basic or shallow, like, oh yeah, Jupiter's in the 5th, but it's like, oh wait, but Jupiter's in Capricorn in the 5th in retrograde, and he's squaring that Mars there. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if I would tell them yes. That's the way that we have to be looking. So that we're looking actually more specifically at what the actual condition of these planets really are. Okay, when a planet is in the opposite sign to its domicile, it is said to be in a condition of detriment or estrangement. I really like the term estrangement because it's estranged from its own nature, right? If it's in the opposite of its own sign, then it can't act as itself. And so I was just reading somewhere, somebody was saying that planets in opposition or in detriment have a tendency to overcompensate because they are not feeling that energy. I mean, I have planets in detriment, but both my Mercury and my Jupiter are in detriment. And I don't know if I would say it's like an overreach of some sort, but definitely there is they're opposing, so they're kind of connecting the natures of the signs to each other. But I don't know if I would say that it's a kind of an overreach of that type. But we'll see.
I don't know, Antoine. I think that with your Mercury and Sagittarius, your fast tongue has ever gotten you in trouble.
And too much truth for the
Yeah.
The truth, truth will set some free, but it will put some in jail. I've been more of the latter type. Okay, so anyway, so domicile, detriment, or estrangement. The planet is estranged from its own nature. And then exaltation, detriment, or right, exaltation or fall, or kingdom and slavery. So the opposite of domicile is detriment. The opposite of exaltation is fall. Okay. So those things are important, and you should be looking for them in the chart. Now, here's the thing. You got stuff in fall, you got stuff in detriment. What did I say? Anything can work on a personal level in a natal chart. Anything can work. Anything can be made to work. We are, however, might want to look at the areas of life that are being ruled by those planets, because that's where we will see whether or not you're satisfied with what you're getting, right? Okay, so peregrination, this is the next one, and this I put this in because everybody has peregrine planets. A planet is considered peregrine when it is located in a sign where it has no essential dignity. Now, I'm not taking the other two smaller dignities into account, or the three smaller dignities into account here, but ultimately, a sign like a planetary position like Mars and Gemini, that Mars is very, very much peregrine in that sign. Venus in Aquarius, like me, is very much peregrine in that sign. Saturn in Taurus is very peregrine in that sign. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. There has to be a certain amount that you kind of know. We went through this. I think we went through this one in Personal Ascendant, probably, but also probably in planetary planetary strength and why it matters. But these things are really important, more so than you think. More so, like where the planet is, what sign it's in. Like one of the things that we tends to be the focus is there tends to be so much focus on sign that we forget that the planets are what are making things actually happen. And then if you focus on the planet, people don't tend to know very much about the planet, so they don't even think to look at how the sign modifies how the planet operates. That's how signs are really powerful. The signs are powerful in how they modify the operation and behavior of the planets. I'm going to say it one more time. The signs are powerful in how they modify. We got another new person. The signs are powerful in how they modify the behavior of the planet that occupies that sign. See, the person came in, I lost my train of thought. I hope somebody got that down well. And if you did, put it in the chat for everybody else, because that's really important. That is how signs are important. They're not really important in any other way, in my opinion. But there's another way, and they classify certain ways. But ultimately, whoever just came in, mute yourself, please. Mute yourself. All right, so accidental dignity. So moving on so that was essential dignity and how a planet can become strong based on the sign that it occupies, or become weak based on the sign that it occupies. That's really important. Then the other thing that's important is accidental dignity. Accident means happening or circumstance, and accidental dignity refers to a planet being strengthened or weakened by house placement. Okay, so the houses that are considered strong, first of all, if you don't know, there might be some people in here who are really at beginning level, and they may know what houses kind of are or whatever, but understand that the planets are the actual energies that do everything. We just talked about the zodiac signs and how they are emanations. They are masculine and feminine emanations of the planets. Now we talk about the houses, which make up that big circle that we look at on our charts. And the houses think of them, it looks like a pie, right? Think of them as slices. Each different one is a little slice. It's a slice of life. So those are the slices of life or areas of life. And each of those represents a different thing. All of those houses have a sign on the edge or cusp. That's what the word cusp really means. edge. And it's used to begin a house generally at this point. Now, you whole sign people, don't come at me, but it's generally the cusp is the beginning of a house, right? But you whole sign people, the cusp is the strongest point in the house. And that's something so that even the Vedic astrologers who use whole sign houses still consider the cusp to be the strongest point of the house. So that's something to consider, even if you're using whole sign. And what does everybody know I say about whole sign versus quadrants? Use both. Okay, there are 3 types of houses. 1, 4, 7, and 10 are angular. 2, 5, 8, and 11 are succedent. 3, 6, 9, and 12 are cadent. Okay, so those are the 3 types of houses or the qualities of house, just like there are 3 types of signs, right? So there's kind of something of a correlation, not fully. And planets in angular and succedent houses are considered to be advancing. They're able to advance. Basically, the ancients believed that the angles and the succedents were the busiest of the houses. They were able to be busy and to be prosperous. And so they're considered, when planets were there, that they were then able to kind of advance in whatever it was that they were trying to do. Planets in cadent houses are considered weak and are said to be in retreat. Now one of the things that Rob Hand, who is one of the kind of godfathers of the Renaissance astrology movement, he said that one of the things that he did not bear out for him was planets in cadent houses being weak. And I can't necessarily say that for myself. I do think that there is a little bit of a difference. Certainly, like I said, on a personal level, anything can be made to work, and it all depends on who's there and what they're doing. But ultimately, I think that we can go by this scheme until it shows itself to be incorrect. Planets in angular houses are able to be fully at large. They are pushed forward. They are promoted by the chart. Houses 6, 8, and 12 are considered malefic. Okay, so those are the malefic houses. 6th house is the house of illnesses. 8th house is the house of death. 12th house is the house of hidden enemies, self-undoing. You're going to want to write this part down. The 7 advantageous places and house strengths from strongest to weakest. So the 7 advantageous places will be the 1st, the 10th, the 7th, the 4th, the 11th, the 5th, the 9th. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. All right. So you can draw, if you're writing this down, you can draw a line underneath the 9th house, and the rest of the houses are, as you can see, the points get smaller and smaller. So for instance, if you, like Lily, who is usually in our course, if Lily has a bunch of planets in her 1st house, all of those planets would get 12 points. This is the points that they would get for being there. That's the only reason I'm showing you is strong to weak, is because there were actually point systems that they used to figure a lot of this stuff out. I'm not so down completely with the point system, but I'm just using this for example. First of all, okay, so just understand that. So that means that planets in the 1st house, planets in the 10th house are especially pushed forward, are able to advance especially. So that means that, let's say you've got a really strong Venus, she's in Taurus or she's in Pisces, but she's in the 6th house. So this is it. So one of the things that I'm always saying too is that any good signification can be rendered bad. Any bad signification can be rendered good. So malefics can act in benefic ways. Benefics can act in malefic ways. A planet that's in the 6th house is going to act maybe a little bit more malefically. It's not going to be able to have its fun. But here's the other thing. A planet that rules the 6th house or the 8th house or the 12th house in an angle is going to be able to do its thing. So this is kind of the thing. Like I said, I feel like there's just a real shallowness of how we kind of look at astrology when there's so many factors to kind of take into account, and we should never just take one factor into account to come up with a judgment about something. All right, so the 7 advantageous places, the house strengths from strongest to weakest. Look at your chart right now, see where your planets are. get an idea of what would be considered strong, what could be considered weak. I'm assuming you've already done that with the detriment, domicile detriment, exaltation, fall. You've probably already done that. So you can see that with almost everything, there is a mixture of significations that are brought to bear through which or from which we're supposed to come to some kind of judgment. All right. So from there, this is another way. So all of these were just ways in which a planet could be, and I'm actually going to get a little bit more specific about it in just a second. These are the planetary joys. There were actually 4 types of planetary joys. I'm sharing 2 of them. The houses in which the planets rejoice and the signs in which the planets rejoice. So you can put all that down here. 1st house Mercury, 3rd house Moon, 5th house Venus. So that's important for today, right? The 5th house is the joy of Venus. So that's important for today's thing. 6th house Mars, 9th house Sun, 11th house Jupiter, 12th house Saturn. And we went into this quite a bit more in planetary strength and why it matters. So definitely, if you're like, wait, this is going so fast. I'm just learning this. I had no idea anything like this existed, which in many cases I'm sure you didn't. Check out planetary strength. So the planets rejoice in these houses because the house shares significations with the planet's universal rulership, right? So Venus is love and beauty and pleasure. The 5th house has those significations, right? Mercury is skill and talent. The 1st house represents your skills and your talents. The 3rd house is the 3rd house was called Dea or goddess. And so the moon is the goddess. The opposite of the 3rd house is the 9th house, which was called God, which was called God. The sun is in his joy in the 9th house. The sun is Deo, right? So those are some of the ways that those kind of come into why, and also to understand the difference between a planet's universal significations, what they naturally represent, like Mercury is reading and writing, Venus is sex and love and good things that smell good, those kinds of things, and what they mean when they rule a house. Well, not just when they're in a house, but when they rule a house, because that's the most important. Okay, so these are their joys by sign. Now, for those of you who remember that were with me when we talked about planetary strength and why it matters and the other stuff, we've been talking a lot about daytime and nighttime and who the daytime planets are and who the nighttime planets are. So I'm not going to write it down. I'm just going to slip through all this stuff. The daytime planets are Sun, Saturn, and Jupiter. The nighttime planets are Moon, Venus, and Mars. Mercury is common to both. And as a result, the joys of the planets by sign are the signs that they own that also are of the same sect. So that also are daytime or nighttime. The moon is a nighttime planet. Her joy is Cancer, which is a nighttime sign. Mercury is in Virgo because he's not just a domicile ruler, he's the exaltation. He's in domicile and exaltation in Virgo. The joy of Venus is Taurus. That's a nighttime sign. She's a nighttime planet. The joy of the sun is Leo. He is the daytime star. Leo is a daytime sign. Mars is Scorpio. He's a nighttime guy. Scorpio is a nighttime sign. Jupiter is Sagittarius. He's a daytime planet. Sagittarius is a daytime sign. Saturn is Aquarius. This is why Aquarius should not be given to Uranus. Saturn is a daytime planet. Aquarius is a daytime sign. Okay, so these are the zodiacal joys of the planets. These are all ways in which the planets can be, like I say, strengthened or weakened. This is a way in which that they can be strengthened. We're going to look at just a little bit more closely now and look at how planets can be debilitated. So this comes from the Anime Astrologiae, which means the soul of the astrologer, and it involves 149 considerations that every astrologer should take into account when they look at a chart, or before they look at a chart, or as they're about to look at a chart. And consideration number 5 is the 16 ways in which the moon can be debilitated. Consideration number 6 is the ways that a planet that isn't the moon can be debilitated. And when we get further down the line, we'll look at the 16 ways for the moon as well. Why? Because the moon is the co-ruler of everything. So the moon is Fortuna. The moon is the roll of the dice as to whether it will happen or not. And it's in any kind of chart. And so that's why we're going to do some stuff later on where we're going to look at the moon. The moon will be kind of one of the things that we look at to see if there's a love life. Okay, because she's the co-ruler. The moon is co-ruler in all things because she is the mediatrix between the celestial realm and the earth. So that's what to remember. That's the way that we look at the moon differently from modern astrology. It's not just your feelings or your needs. The moon is the mediatrix. She's the closest to the earth. She's the mediatrix between the earth and the celestial realm, and she transfers the celestial energy down here to us. And that's how she makes all this stuff happen. All right, so that's real. That's why the moon is so important. Okay, so the first thing is the first thing they said is when a planet is cadent from the angle. So that means 3, 6, 9, 12. Now remember, 9 was one of the 7 good places, right? It was one of the 7 beneficial places. But the very first debilitation is when a planet is cadent from the angles. 3, 6, 9, or 12, and so that he does not behold the same. Now that's different because in order for him to not behold the same, he would. So we talked about this last week. What signs behold what signs, and what planets. Remember, we did all this last week. So that what they're basically saying is that 6 and 12. They're not saying 3 and they're not saying 9 because the 9th sign makes a 120-degree angle to the ascendant, and the third house, the 3rd sign makes a 60-degree sign to the ascendant. So really, what they're saying is the 6th and the 12th. So when a planet is in the 6th or 12th, that's the first consideration. The second is when a planet is retrograde. Why? Because the planet isn't going forward, and retrogradation was considered mischief-making, going back on, unpredictability, instability, erraticism. So that was those were some of the things that were considered that would happen to a planet when it went retrograde. It would go the opposite. It would go off course. It'd go off course and go on its own and do its own thing, whether or not it was beneficial. Okay. The third is combustion, and we talked a lot about combustion. So we have some people in here who may or may not know what combustion is. Combustion is when the sun is conjunct any planet. So there are 3 stages of combustion. And once again, go back to the other videos, and I go into that quite a bit of detail. But there's under the rays, when a planet is 15 degrees away from the sun. Once the planet gets to about 8.5 degrees away from the sun, it's in deep combustion. And when it gets to within 6 degrees, 17 minutes to 6 minutes, but from 17 minutes away from exact conjunction, it's what they call cosmi, and it's supposed to give the planet that's cosmi, not the sun. It's supposed to give that other planet this kind of magical superpower. So as a matter of fact, there's a woman that's been looking up all this stuff about. She's got, I think, Venus cosmi or something like that, and she wants to know what it's about, or Jupiter cosmi. Anyway, so that's combustion. Why? Because the sun is hot and dry. He's excessively hot and dry. So any planet that's in connection to the sun is overheated. It's burnt out. It's husked out. It's burnt out. It's husked out. And the sun takes on its significations and wears it like a vestment. The thing that I usually say for it is someone comes in and says, "Where's Jupiter?" And the sun goes, "You're talking to him. It's me. I'm right here." Right? So that's combustion. All right. Let's see. When any of them is in opposition. Oh wait, yeah, combustion. Right. Look, it even said within 15 degrees before or after the sun. The fourth, when any of them is in opposition, corporal conjunction, or square of either or both of the infortunes without reception. Now, last week we talked about reception. We've talked about who the malefic planets are. The infortunes are the malefic planets, and they are Mars and Saturn. Okay, so what they're saying is that if there's an opposition, square, or conjunction to a malefic planet, that debilitates the planet. right? So kind of in the same way, if it's conjunct the sun, that debilitates the planet. If it's conjunct Saturn or Mars, that can debilitate the planet. Of course, all of this, except for combustion, all of this is indicative of what sign the planets are in. Remember, we just talked about that, right? So it's really all about what sign things are in, whether or not things are going to be really shitty or not. Okay, 5, when any of them are besieged by the unfortunates, we'll talk about besiegement another time. But that's definitely something important. And if any of you are looking at charts often, look at Adolf Hitler. Look at Adolf Hitler's chart and look at Adolf Hitler's Venus. Adolf Hitler's Venus is a perfect example of besiegement. Okay, 6th, when a planet is joined to another in his declension or fall. Remember your mouth fell open, CF, when I talked about this? So remember when we were talking about reception last week, I was saying, yeah, it's great when a planet is applying to the ruler of the sign that planet A is applying to planet B, and planet B is the ruler of that sign. Ooh, that's fantastic, right? But what happens when planet A is applying to planet B and planet B is in the detriment or fall of planet A? That's what they're talking about in number 6. Okay, so it's really about what helps to promote. Detriment and fall doesn't help to promote. So that's kind of what they're talking about here. I know it's kind of a slog, but this is part of this really is for the people who've been with me for a while. I'm putting out new information because I know that they're really interested in these things and in looking at these things and trying to apply some of them and seeing whether they work or not. Okay, 7 is when it's joined to a planet that's cadent from the ascendant. 8, when a planet is retrograde, peregrine, right? We just talked about peregrination. When a planet is in a sign that it has no dignity in, like Mars and Gemini. Now, I consider this to be less of a debility than it's said here. By the way, what it really tends to mean, in my opinion, is that planet is dependent on the ruler of the sign it's in. So Mars and Gemini would be that much more dependent on how Mercury, who rules Gemini, is acting. Number 9, when a planet is with the head or tail of the dragon, that's the nodes. So all of you who are looking for the North Node for your the North Node for your destiny, back in the 13th century, any planet with either of the nodes was considered debilitated. And 10th, when a planet weakens itself when it's in the 7th from its own. So that's when it's in its own detriment or fall. When it's feral, which means it's not in any kind of, it won't be aspected by anybody while it's in that sign, and not in reception, which is something we kind of came to. So these are the impediments of the planets, the causes of hindrances, delays, and mischiefs in nativities, questions, elections. And then I put just a few more in here. Any planet in conjunction, sextile, or trine to the benefics is considered strengthened by the association. So just like when they said any conjunction, square, or opposition to the malefics, the benefics are Venus and Jupiter. And well, Venus, Jupiter, Moon, and Sun, but only when the Sun is not conjuncting. Any planet in conjunction, square, or opposition to the malefics is considered weakened or debilitated. To understand whether a planet is operating as malefic or benefic, take note of its zodiacal state, its placement by house, and its house rulerships. Planets who rule, now that's important. So make sure that you take that one down if you take nothing else down. To understand whether a planet is operating as a malefic or benefic, that's whether it's naturally malefic or naturally benefic. Okay? Take note of its zodiacal state, its placement by house, and its house rulership. Right? Planets who rule the 6th, 8th, and 12th can be made functionally malefic because they're going to bring the pain. The malefics operate benefically when in their own domiciles or exaltations. The benefics operate malefically when in their detriment and fall. You want that too. I'm going to say it again. Malefics operate benefically. Malefics can produce. They can give good. They can, it may be harder. It may be slower, right? Saturn, it might be slow. It might, whatever, but you'll get there. It will happen. He's in Capricorn. He's in Aquarius. It's going to come to happen. But if Venus is in Virgo, there may be problems. All right? Any planet in bodily conjunction with the sun is debilitated, and retrogradation is considered a form of debility, especially when partnered with fall. All right. Okay, now we come, so questions. Let's just take a breather right here. I know I whirlwinded through this review, but questions. Are there any questions? Are there any questions that won't take 20 minutes to answer, I guess, really? Nope, I don't see any, or maybe some are coming. So
Well, actually, Diana was talking about her chart, and she said, "Oh no, my Venus, Mars, and Mercury are all burnt out from the sun."
okay. Well, we'll come to that. we'll come to that about. As a matter of fact, actually, this is the place to talk about it. So, what I want to talk about now is the chart and karma. And so, I see there are a lot of different belief systems connected to the usage of astrology. There is a really strong kind of new age kind of prosperity, what do we call it? Like, The Secret or Course in Miracles. There's a strain of that kind of belief system and worldview that goes through a lot of modern astrology. And with that comes this idea of astrology as being a guidepost. Anything can be changed. Your astrology doesn't really say what's going to happen. You can change it. It's just a guidepost for you. Then on the absolute opposite spectrum, you've got the Vedic chart, you've got the Vedic belief system, which says the chart is the blueprint of your karma. And it's basically telling you it's the karma that you agreed to come in for. I go that direction, to be honest with you. Now, even though there is no real there is no tradition of belief in reincarnation as far as Western astrology, at least overtly, as far as Western astrology is considered throughout its long history. I do very much believe in reincarnation, and I do very much believe in karma, and I also do very much believe that the astrology chart is the blueprint of our karma. All of it is our karma, all of it. So they're not just karmic elements to the chart, it's our karma. Which means that with karma, somebody's a king, somebody's a pauper, somebody's a blah, blah, blah. Somebody meets their true love at 15 and is married to them until they're 80. Somebody doesn't get married until they're 45. Somebody has one marriage that lasts forever, people are fighting and crazy and can't stand it. One person has 3 marriages, and the third one is finally the great one the love of their life. That's karma. Everybody has a different karmic heritage. Everybody inherits something different. To that end, to the person who just said, "Oh no, my stuff is all combusted," you're probably feeling that, right? You're probably experiencing, like, if Venus is one of those planets that's being combusted, you're probably feeling that. Somebody who's with us who has Venus in Taurus or Venus in Pisces or something like that, or well-considered Venus, is feeling that too, and that feels very different. However, the other thing that the Vedics also believe, which I prescribe to, is that there are 3 types of karma. There is the karma that can be changed, there is the karma that cannot be changed, and then there is the karma, some of which can be changed and some of which cannot. Those of you who are versed enough in your chart that want to go to a Vedic site and do your Vedic chart, what I would suggest, do your Vedic chart, and the cardinal signs in your Vedic chart are the ones you can change. The fixed signs in your Vedic chart are the ones you can't change, and the mutable signs in the Vedic chart are the ones you kind of can and kind of can't. I'm talking about the planets that you find in that particular instance. Okay, so Vedic has a really good thing for that. We don't have anything like that because, like I said, there's no tradition for reincarnation. So what I'm beginning to think, though, I do still think that it's totally our karma, and also it's kind of written, and in some cases we can change things, and in some cases we have to change us. The Venus hour just started here in Mexico, where I am. So the Venus hour just started, and look, on Venus is on the table. And I'm about to, after I finish, I'm about to finish my spiel, and I'm going to go right into her. So this is so interesting. All right. So my point is this, that there is a certain amount, does anybody, if there's anybody here that's in their 30s who had a rocky relationship road in their 20s? Like I've met so many people like that, 31, 32, had rocky relationship situations in their 20s, and now they're really trying to figure out what what they fucked up, and in order to get the right thing. And sometimes that happens. Like I had a really good friend, she was 31, whatever, she had gone through lots of weird relationships, and she finally found the guy. Now she's married. They just had their second child, that kind of sphere. So in some cases, the karma can change. In some cases, the karma means we need to put up with this bullshit and this bullshit and this bullshit before we get what we really want. Sometimes we just put up with bullshit after bullshit after bullshit after bullshit, and we don't get what we really want. So a lot of this particular presentation, I kind of call this "When Will I Find My Soulmate?" But that's a fake title. The real title is "Destroy Your Dream of Love." And the reason I'm saying that is because we all have this very similar dream of love, a fairy tale dream of love, but we're all attracting something completely different from that. Very few people actually really attract the fairy tale dream of love. So what's better for you is to understand what it is that you're attracting, what it is, where your own attitudes are, and what the cycle brings to you, because that's really the karmic aspect. You don't have any control over that to an extent, right? You keep attracting, you hear people saying all the time, I keep attracting this kind of blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I guess so. And so how can I get around it? What can I do? Well, let's look at it. So let's come to Venus and her complete significations. I thought I would put this entire thing in so you would get an idea. Oh shit, did I fuck that up? God damn it. So you would get a complete idea of some of the things that she's about. But I screwed up, and I'm going to have to change this. So, but anyway, one of the things you can see is it talks about her temperament. She's cold and moist, which makes her phlegmatic. She's temperate and a fortune. She signifies women and the mother. She signifies especially the mother in the daytime. The moon represents the mother at night. And younger sisters, beauty and clothing and ornaments, also gold and silver. So jewelry is under Venus. Anything that's, anything that is, I enjoy being a girl, or diamonds are a girl's best friend, that's Venus. Amiability towards friends, so she's friendly and amiable, admiration and elation, pride and boasting, a love of singing and amusement and laughing, ornamentation and joy and happiness, dancing and playing the pipes. And that, where I screwed up, it said any kind of intoxicating drink, and a multitude of sexual intercourse of diverse kinds. And mind you, this is from the 8th century. So we're talking multitude of sexual intercourse of diverse kinds in the 8th century. So that's what's up with her. And she signifies the love of children, the love of people, endearment towards them, and trust in everyone, and being dutiful and gracious, and generosity, liberality. The reason I'm reading this is because she ain't just love. She isn't just love. She's beauty. She's liberal. Look at all the things she is, right? She's clothing. She's love of shopping. She's sweetness of speech, flirting, good looks, beauty of character, freedom, all of these different things that Venus really fully encompasses. So to get a full idea of who she is, and I mean, we didn't even go into like what trees, what herbs, what minerals, what etc. What metals she owns, because all of the planets, they all have their very, very specific significations. So so I just kind of wanted to bring that out so that you could kind of see how complex, because one of the things I keep saying all the time is the more you know, the more you can do. And what I tend to find is that people really only know the most kind of basic when it comes to the planets. Like when it comes to the zodiac signs, people will talk for 15 minutes, 20 minutes at a time about how this sign acts and blah blah blah. But when it comes to the planet, Mercury communication. Well, I know Mercury's communication. Mercury is more than communication. Oh, I know Venus is love. Venus is more than love. The more you know, the more you can do. So Venus is the lesser benefic. Jupiter is the greater benefic. She provides benefit, because benefit through beauty and pleasure. She is the queen of love and marriage. Love and marriage. Her domain is the boudoir. So local determination is a term we're going to go into in just a second, but we've been talking about it the entire time. The local determination of Venus reveals the native's aesthetic, connection to material pursuits, values, artistic or mutual ability, desires, sexual nature, attitudes, and experience with love relationships of an intimate nature. So there's all those other things too, right, that we just looked at, that we just saw, but germane to what we're talking about today, this is where we are. Aesthetics, materialism, because remember the word venal comes from the word Venus. Oh, you're so venal, right? That's very materialistic, and all you care about is the bottom line. Materialism, the things to which you attach value. So what we think is valuable, what we consider to be valuable, artistic or musical talent, sexual nature and desires, attitudes, and experience with intimacy and love relationships.
Hey, Antoine, would you mind giving us the source again? Is it Benjamin Dyke's translation of your source material?
Mm-hmm. Can you see what I'm typing?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so the Benjamin Dykes is a translation of Abu Mashar, who was a Persian astrologer of the 8th century. And so there's 3 books contained in this introduction. They're all 3 introductions. They're all books that are considered completely beginning, like astrology for complete beginners. And it's interesting when you look at like what is considered the astrology for complete beginners then, and the astrology for complete beginners now, you understand why traditionally astrology belonged to Mercury, because Mercury is reading, writing, and arithmetic. And think, in the 14th century, in the 8th century, in the 9th century, astrologers would be among the only people who could read and write, right? So it's, and the only people who could do complex math. And remember-
and they had only parchment and ink and no pencil, no erasers.
And CF and I come from the era, I'm probably the very last era where we erected the chart by hand. In order to do it. So I know she learned how to do it that way. I remember. I
started in 1968. I calculated every chart.
Exactly. And as a result, I started doing it by hand as well. But that's really, so that's that's the difference now. One of the main differences I see now, this kind of understanding of astrology being a really intense, deep subject, a deep, important subject. Now it's kind of treated a little bit like a parlor game. Okay, local determination, the general condition of a planet based on strength of placement by sign, strength of placement by house, and aspects being made to it. Okay, and so that means that instead of looking at planets, we should be looking at systems. And I'm going to get to a chart in a second and talk about systems in just a second. So for instance, if you have a Venus, we're going to talk about Venus. Let me just go straight to a chart. Let me finish this and I'm going to go straight to a chart. Okay. So Bonatti, places to look for love and marriage. Venus, the position of Venus, and you see I put my zodiacal position of Venus, the position of the moon, the position of the 7th house, the position of the Lord of the 7th, and then these 2, the part of marriage and the part of the ruler of the part of marriage. Now, most of you have probably heard of the part of fortune, but maybe don't know that there are many, many, many parts. And this goes way back to Egypt. It goes way back to Hellenistic Egypt. So like probably right around the beginning of the AD period, of our AD period. And it was called a lot instead, L-O-T, lot of fortune, meaning like, your lot in life. So the lot of fortune, lots of marriage, there are lots for pretty much everything. And I'm wondering if people are interested in kind of finding it today. I thought maybe that might be something we could try, but there needs to be, I don't know. And let me just let's just move on. But one of the reasons, one of the things that we're going to do going forward, you know how I've talked about essential dignity, and I've talked about the two main essential dignities, and the other three we haven't really talked about. I'm going to introduce you to those other three at a certain point, because that's how, remember we talked about the scoring thing. That's how the scoring thing kind of works out. And actually what Bonatti would have done is he wouldn't have looked just at who rules Aquarius, who rules Mars. He would have done this too. He would have looked at who rules Aquarius. He would have looked at who rules Aries, what their local determination was, who rules Gemini, what their local determination was. He would have gone down the line, but he also would have looked at all of them together and created a compound ruler based on it. And you have to know all five of the dignities in order to, it's called the Almuten. And so the Almuten or Almuktaz, or the main ruler of it. And so there's this compound ruler, and it would be the ruler of all of these particular places. And so that's another interesting thing. And CFU and I would need to do that sometime soon. I just did mine. It was very interesting. But so we're going to come to that. But for right now, just look at these four places: Venus, the moon, the seventh house, and the Lord of the seventh. So for right now, do that. And the first thing I want you to do is notice if any of those signs are in licentious signs. The licentious signs are Aries, Taurus, Leo, and Capricorn. I'm also including Libra because it's a Venus sign. Okay. And
I have Venus in Taurus, so that's licentious for sure.
But do you have 2 or 3 or 4?
Yeah, Jupiter too, and Mercury. Oh yeah,
Right.
we got it.
Right. But wait, but do you have 2 or 3 or 4 of these? That's my question. Do you have the moon in one of them? Do you have is the seventh house cusp one of them? Is the Lord of the seventh in one? The Lord of the seventh is, because I know
Jupiter rules it. Yep.
Venus is
In
Taurus,
Taurus.
Jupiter. Right. So that's my question. So
Right.
for those of you who know how, if any of you know how to find parts, does anybody know how to do that here? Would you say yay or nay in the chat? Does anybody know how to find parts? What the procedure is for figuring out like the part of fortune? Okay, so we'll come to that in a second. So for you, CF, the part of marriage for women is Moon to Mars. Okay, now the other thing that is interesting to look at is fertile signs, especially if you have them on the cusp of the 7th. Ruler of the 7th or Venus. Fertile signs are also called fruitful, and they multiply, which means more than one. So a lot of times, and I've seen this quite often, you see fertile signs on the cusp of the 7th, or you see the ruler of the 7th in fertile signs. Now, I don't think this is a cut in stone rule at all. It's something that I'm interested in looking at more closely. And then there's the opposite of the fertile signs: Gemini, Leo, and Virgo. And so I've been kind of playing around with a theory that sterile signs can have the same effect on 7th house issues that they can have on 5th house issues, right? 5th house issues are what? Children, right? And so that's why we use fertile and sterile signs to kind of, and we talked about this in New Look at the Zodiac, right? We talked about the fertile signs and the sterile signs, and we looked at charts of some people that couldn't have children and saw how many sterile signs were all over. I also think that, notice that Virgo is the fall of Venus, and it's a sterile sign. And notice also that two of the three sterile signs are Gemini signs. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and Mercury rules children and young people, youth, children, young people, the young, which means that in a lot of ways, Mercury doesn't want to grow up. That's one of the things that I've also started noticing about some of these charts where people haven't had children. They weren't infertile, but their life never came around. Often came around to it. Often I see the Gemini and the Virgo a lot because their life never went into the next stage of adulthood, which was marriage and children. Right? That never left that Mercury stage. It stayed kind of in that Mercury stage. Even if they've been living with some person for the last 15 years or something, but they've never gotten married to them, never had children, often you see this Gemini Virgo stuff going on in connection to the fifth house. I'm talking about not having children. But I'm wondering, and this is part of, like I said, my theory is that there might also be a connection between these planets and asexuality or no marriage. There could be. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I'm looking at charts for that. I wanted to do a little bit of what Venus with planets is, and this is rare for me. This is as close to any kind of cookbook type astrology that you'll ever get from me. I promise you. But the reason why is because there are really some specific things that Venus represents when she's with certain planets. And so this is what I put down. Venus and Mercury are playmates. One of the things that you tend to see the most with Venus is Mercury is musical talent, and especially dance, but musical talent or dance, but definitely artistic or musical talent. But when I see Venus Mercury, the first thing I think is music. The first thing I see is I think is music. And now I'm a musician. I don't have Venus Mercury, but the Venus Mercury is a signature for artistic talent and musical talent and interest in talent in dance. And so also Venus Mercury, now think about Venus. Now, one of the things, remember it said that Venus could be, what was it, sex of many different types? And Mercury is called common to good and to bad. So one of the things that was considered was that if you had Venus and Mercury in a licentious sign, that could create quite a bit of sexual behavior and misbehavior, and somebody who's just off the fucking charts, you're fucking everything that moves. Well, there's a famous movie actor who we all thought was heterosexual for the longest time, but it turned out that he was one of the biggest sluts in New York first, and then in Hollywood, gay sluts, well, bisexual sluts, really. Paul Newman. And Paul Newman has the Venus-Mercury conjunction in Capricorn on the ascendant in the first house. And so there's his beauty, the Venus is beauty. So you've got the first house is the body. So you've got the Venus beauty, you've got the Venus-Mercury talent in the arts, and then you've got the Venus-Mercury in the licentious sign living it up. Okay, so playmates, Venus-Mercury. Venus-Mars, the scandalous, the scandal. I have especially the Venus-Mars conjunction. I'm really talking about conjunctions in this particular case, in almost all of these. Matter of fact, in all of these, I'm specifically talking about conjunctions. All right. Now, mind you, if you have a connection between these planets that's not a conjunction, just think that it's a little bit less concentrated effect. Right? So a Venus-Mercury trine isn't going to feel the same as a Venus-Mercury conjunction, right? So the Venus-Mercury sextile isn't going to feel the same. A Venus-Mercury square is most certainly not going to feel the same. And last week we talked about what the nature of the square was, what the nature of the sextile was, what the nature of the trine, all of those things. Venus-Mars, the scandalous, we're talking conjunctions here specifically. So I have the Venus-Mars conjunction. I experienced a really major scandal. I'm gay, and I was outed by my neighbor who I fell in love with when I was 14 in my ninth grade when I was 14. And as a result, I became the school fag and the whole schmear. So I experienced a scandal around my sexuality, etc. All kinds of speculation about what I was, what I was doing, and who I was doing, whatever. So and I've met other people. Have a chart of another guy. Well, we don't have his chart, but a guy who's experiencing some serious problems in the small town where he lives. He's screwed his way through most of it, and he's got the Venus-Mars conjunction as well in Sagittarius. Okay, so scandalous. There's a scandalous aspect to the Venus-Mars, often passionate and sexually active, may have experienced a sexual scandal or exhibit sexually scandalous behavior. Somebody in here has the Mars Venus. Is it Layla or somebody? Somebody's got it. Okay, Venus Sun. Can you really see me in this light? The answer is no. Planets with the Sun are in a state of combustion. Venus's house significations are nullified. Okay. Venus Jupiter. Now this is something I've been using for a long time, for a while. Too much of a good thing. Venus is pleasure. Jupiter is increase. When Venus and Jupiter are together, especially the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, it can be excessive behavior. It can be addiction. It can even go into addiction. If you ever heard of Billie Holiday, the famous jazz singer who was also known for being a heroin addict, Venus, Jupiter, and Pisces. Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Pisces. So Venus-Jupiter, too much of a good thing. We enjoy it so much, we've got to do it a lot, and that has the possibility of turning into an excessive behavior pattern that comes back to bite us. Venus Saturn, the Iceman cometh. Right. This is something you're going to see a lot. As a matter of fact, you're going to see it in most of the charts that I'm going to show you. Venus Saturn is really responsible for most of the problems that you see when people are writing in. Most often, you can see a Venus in Aquarius. You can see Venus in Capricorn, not so much because of the Earth thing, but Venus in Aquarius can be distancing to love relationships. I myself have Venus in Aquarius. Saturn is cold and dry. It can freeze out, repress, or suppress, or block the libido. Okay, Saturn is isolatory, right? So he's the author of isolation and can inhibit the impulse to connect with others. And then Saturn is able to corrupt. They call him the corruptor, and can sometimes represent being corrupted or sexually abused. So the sexuality has been tampered with by an authority figure. Okay, so let's look at a chart or two where we look at what's working, some stuff that works and some stuff that isn't working. Excuse me. Okay, this just came up today on Reddit. Unlucky in love. I've been in a string of unsuccessful relationships, and I'm getting to the point in life where she's not sure if she's going to be able to have children or not. It looks like she might be in her 30s somewhere. And she wanted to know, she wants to know, does it show up in my chart? Is there an issue? Okay, so the first thing that we want to look at 2 or 3 different things. The first thing I want to look at when someone is saying I'm unlucky in love is what? Venus. We want to look at Venus. But then we also want to look at the 7th house. So those are the 2 things immediately that I do. I look at Venus, and then I look at the 7th house. So let's look at both. Venus, first off, is in Gemini. Weren't we just talking about Gemini being a sterile sign? And so Venus is in Gemini. One of the interesting and important things about Gemini is that Gemini hates commitment. Gemini hates commitment. Gemini doesn't like to go deep all the time, right? So what you're going to find sometimes with people is that they're thinking that it's coming from outside of them, but often it's coming from them. Often it's coming from them. Gemini is the twins, so this person is of 2 minds, really, or has been of 2 minds about it. And then look, the Venus is at 10 Gemini. The Saturn is at 17 Sagittarius. It's a wide opposition, but we've got Saturn cooling down the ardor. We've got Saturn blocking the access. Saturn blocking the access to it. So there's a perfect example of this Venus-Saturn where unlucky, right? So unlucky is a Saturn word, right? So that's already right there. The other thing that we have going on here, when we look at the ruler of the 7th house, we've got Aries, so that's the opposite sign for Venus, right? So already that's also different, right? That's also a little bit different, right? Libra is the ascendant, which means this is a Venusian person. That means that they won't be attracting. Oh, I guess we probably should be talking about what kind of person we be attracting, right? Okay, so what kind of person would this person attract? The planets in the house tend to be descriptors, right? So they tend to be the things that describe kind of what kind of issues come up through the house. So the moon, the moon being there, we had somebody else, I think it was Becca, has the moon in the seventh house. The moon in the seventh house shows that the person's most of their concerns are towards relationship, right? So often you'll see this in charts, and this is why I say that charts are karmic, because what you'll see often is that you'll have a chart like this with a Libra rising. Libra is very connected towards other people. Libra is all about relationship and completing itself through the relationship with another. And you'll have the moon in the seventh saying, yes, this is what I want. This is what I think about all the time. This is what I consider. And then you'll have problems so that it won't happen. But what will happen instead, you'll have things that'll go into the seventh that'll say, hey, take a chance on this. Try this out. And it's in order to work the karma. It's in order to make sure that you actually do work that karma off. And so what we have here, the moon is there, Jupiter is there. So there's all this, there has been optimism about it. There has been a need for it and optimism around it. But then also we've got this moon squaring Mars, and the Mars, remember when we said any planet that's in square to a malefic is screwed over, right? So we've got two things going on. We've got moon with Jupiter, which is nice, and then we've got moon squaring the Mars, which is not so nice. And Mars is the ruler of the seventh, and Mars is in Cancer, which is his fall. So even though there's what we call a mutual reception, we talked about that last week. Moon is in Aries, which is ruled by Mars. Mars is in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. Even though there's that mutual reception, I still think that square makes it difficult. I still think that square makes it really difficult for it to happen. And not just that, but the Venus-Saturn opposition especially. And one of the things that I think I was talking to Claire Frost about was I'm seeing in many cases that it's really the Venus that is determining whether or not the love life is good, more so than even the ruler of the seventh. So in this case, Venus-Saturn opposition is definitely showing. What did that just say? Hold on. Change that. All right. I feel so blocked from intimacy and sex. I feel so blocked. So blocked, that's a Saturn word, right? I feel so blocked. I feel that's a moon term, right? And so blocked, that's a Saturn word. So where's our lunar thing? Oh, look, there's Venus in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. I feel. So Venus is in her most feeling nature. And I feel so blocked. Oh, look there. She's squaring Saturn, who's in Aries. His fall. So his fall. So Saturn in fall that's one of the worst positions. This is really a difficult position. It's one of the most kind of unwieldy, and it can create, and even though it's in Aries, it can create paralysis. It can create all kinds of just major problems. But I feel so blocked from intimacy and sex. Does that, that's a great square term too, blocked, not opposed, not like it will never happen, but I just feel blocked, right? That's a great term for square as well. So we've got this Venus in Cancer. And one of the things, actually, I wrote back to this person and asked her if I could use this today. And I said to her that there's a self-protective aversion in this chart, in my opinion, around sex and love. And the reason I said that is because of Cancer. So Cancer is all about the familiar, right? Cancer really, really wants to surround itself with the familial and the familiar, which means then that things that are different, things that I don't really know, I can be somewhat circumspect around. And with Saturn also in the square, it can be made into a threat. Like I don't talk to people I don't know. This is that kind of chart. I don't talk to people I don't know. That's more than likely one of the reasons that there's a blockage around this kind of thing. So once again, we're looking at this Venus, what's going on with Venus, and look here, Venus is ruling the 7th house. So it's a double whammy. It's the only thing we have to look to.
Right. We have a question.
Okay.
Layla's asking, do we consider the house themes here? As in the first example, there was a mutual reception between the 7 and 10, the lords of the 10 and 7, so that the potential partners can be from workplace, but is it hindered because of a square?
A wonderful question. Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. And maybe not hindered, but maybe it won't continue. Right? So let's go back to that chart because that's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was suggesting that it's making these things make it difficult to locate the boudoir. Yeah.
Well, the Venus, yeah, exactly. Or they make it okay. So let's let's separate just for a second the strands between the Venus and the 7th, because the Venus is the boudoir, but the 7th doesn't necessarily have to be that, right? Venus's joy is the 5th. The 7th can be the back seat of the Cadillac, right? The 7th can be the marriage in Las Vegas. It can be Las Vegas, right? So it can be all kinds of things, but it does, as you say, it does inhibit the satisfactory result. That's what I think is really going on here with the square, is that the satisfactory result, a result that I can settle down with and be happy with, that ain't coming. That's what's feeling difficult about this, is that shit comes in, but it's shit that creates all this different tension, and then I don't feel right about it. Look, we got planets in Cancer again. I don't feel really right about it. It makes me mad, and I've already got anger. I've already got issues with not being able to express my anger, and so it's got all that kind of stuff involved with it, right?
Complexity.
Say that again, huh?
Complexity.
Yeah, complexity and changeability. Right, and also it's got the whole thing of what being able to say what it is I feel, because it's mute signs. The Mercury's in mute signs. Remember we talked about that and we saw that chart last time. So these planets are. So this person has a problem saying what they want to say. And look, it's especially in the 7th house. So it looks like the more intimate they get, the more difficult it is for them, and the more tongue-tied they might get. So. Yes, so Layla, fantastic question, and you're absolutely correct. That is definitely what's going on. Let's see. There's another question. Oh, hold on. Okay, I'll stop the share for a second.
She's asking, if Venus is in your 1st house, which is her case, which is right on the ascendant, would you still look to it for the relationships?
Well, remember, planets have their universal significations and they have their house significations. So yes, you would look to Venus for love relationships because that's her universal signification. You would then also look to who is the ruler for the 7th house, who is naturally the who is basically, that's their area of life. That's the area of life that they govern. So in your chart, your Cancer rising, which means your Venus is on the ascendant. Yes, we would look to her for relationships, but then we would also look to Saturn, who's the ruler of the 7th house, for your relationships. For what the marriage might be like, what the partner might be like, when you might get married. Because important thing to kind of keep into consideration is that planets, even when planets can give you what they say they're going to give you, they're going to still act like themselves. I see a lot of charts of people, and especially because on Reddit, almost everybody's in their early 20s, right? But I see lots of charts of people who are panicking because they're 24 and they've never been in a relationship, and they've got a Saturn-ruled 7th house. Saturn is slow. Saturn rules old age. Saturn rules maturity. Right? So when we get to that, that's why it's so different. That's why it can be so different for them. That's why it could be a slow road. That's why it could be nothing was happening and then all of a sudden I met him. So that's kind of, Saturn is going to act in a certain way. Same thing with Mars. Mars is the god of war. So that means there's going to be Mars's action and activity. So maybe it's going to be a very active and action marriage. Maybe there's going to be a lot of fighting, a lot of arguments. Maybe it's going to be really passionate. We fight, we fuck. Wow, I have Saturn on the 7th and Moon also on the 7th.